Please watch on a large screen for maximum detail. Hello and welcome to this Rage Juggernaut PvP guide, centered around the opening attacks and burst. This flowchart explains my reasoning behind the opening attacks. It is what I have found to work the best in the widest range of situations. We start with Saber Throw to proc the 6-piece set bonus for a crit Furious Strike. We use Force Charge next, as a gap closer, and also to auto-crit your Raging Burst. Next, Sundering Strike. I see many people leaving this out before starting their big hitters. It increases your damage by 2% with the 2-piece bonus, and also applies the 20% armor reduction. This is imperative to get the most out of your powerful attacks. Force Crush comes after, to grant your shockwave, and, as a bonus, heavily slow your target. Time to use Raging Burst. The tooltip above Raging Burst on the flowchart is important. You get a buff called Cascading Power, which increases your damage by 5% for 6 seconds, or 4 global cooldowns. Ideally you want your hardest hitters in these next 4 globals. Furious Strike follows Raging Burst, and its damage will coincide with Force Crush's largest damage tick. This leaves you with a huge amount of damage delivered in a window of just 1.5 seconds. Furious Strike applies Beatdown to increase melee damage to the target by 5%. Use Enrage. In the global cooldown between Furious Strike and Obliterate, you should keybind Enrage somewhere easy to press between those two attacks. You can see on my screen that I only have to press E, then T, then R, which lets me press Enrage without delaying the next attack at all. As we move down to the bottom right side of the flowchart, it takes a different approach. Use any or all of those attacks until your opponent is below 30%, and then follow it up with a vicious throw. If they are still not dead, well, it's probably time to start back at Raging Burst again anyway. However, I'm not going to spoon-feed you information for every possible scenario following this. Please use your brain at this point. Since 3.0, Ravage isn't as deadly as it used to be. It's good filler damage, and I would definitely recommend the Immobilize utility. Ravage is the tool to create the secondary burst spike for Rage. As soon as your last big tick of Ravage lands, use your next attack to stack their damage together. You may notice that Assault and Vicious Slash aren't needed at all. You could probably get away with not binding those two, if you can play the spec properly. Smash isn't entirely necessary either, it hits very low in comparison to Raging Burst, and I don't like to waste a shockwave buff on it. High single target burst is more useful than AoE fluff damage in PvP. Most people have 30% area damage reduction from their spec or utilities anyway. As with any class that can taunt, use them both liberally in war zones to assist teammates. Intercede is particularly important to Rage, since it functions as a breaker for any movement impairments. Let's look at utility choices. Starting in Skillful, Unstoppable is mandatory for obvious reasons. As mentioned earlier, Ravage Immobilize is almost compulsory for PvP. For the third choice, I'd recommend Payback. More frequent stun breakers will only help you, considering how many people love to stun lock you in war zones. Rage has enough resource generation to not need the for free Rage when controlled. With Zealous Leap and its many 10-meter abilities, Rage doesn't seem to need Warmonger for more frequent force charges. Moving on to the Masterful tier. The choices here, and also for the final tier, are much more up to personal preference than anything else. Mostly I use Pooled Hatred and Sonic Wall, however, this changes a lot. And really you could use any of them, except Seething Hatred, that one is a waste. I generally use the same two choices in the final tier, through Passion, to reduce Enrage defense's cooldown, and through Power, for the movement speed buff, and movement immunity. Lastly, gearing your Rage Juggernaut. Use the Weapon Master Earpiece and Implants for Power and Surge. For relics, use Focused Retribution and Serendipitous Assault like all other damage classes. The stock Exhumed Vindicator gear is pretty good itself. Don't remove all the alacrity and crit from your gear. It's actually very beneficial because Rage gets a bonus 15% surge, also called crit multiplier, to all its attacks. This increases the value of critical chance for the spec as a whole. For augments, you can't go wrong with power or strength. However, I'm not really the one to ask about optimal stat budgets. I generally don't care too much. I'm not going to cover our defensive cooldowns and stuns, since those are based to the class, and you should know how and when to use them already. There's no way I can talk about every possible scenario you will come across. Okay, I'm outta here. Thank you for watching this Swtor guide.